Good evening, and welcome to Geeking Off the Page. I am Gavin, and it's been a very long time since I've been here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Trevor.
And I'm Mike, and I've been missing Gavin and Troy, but I'm glad Gavin's here.
Me too.
Stop clock is right once or twice a day, so.
Yeah, there we go. And for those who are keeping score, this is episode 45. Oh my God, 45.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's been a week of various shows. Miss Marvel completed its final episode. Netflix dropped their newest version of Resident Evil. More on that.
Yeah. I cannot wait to hear.
Yeah.
Did any of you watch Thor?
No, not yet.
We got one. Okay.
I have a hand up.
We can do some quasi spoilers, not full spoilers. I know Gavin doesn't like spoilers, but
I
want to hear some input on that.
I just saw the Minions Rise of Gru with my girls and Fred today. I'm not going to spoil that, but it had some fun little things about it. There were some interesting trailers that dropped this week, so I can talk about those as well. And anything else you guys have watched or seen or even had a thought about, let's bring them out. Who wants to start?
Gavin, it's been a while. You start with something.
Well, let's start with Ms. Marvel.
All right.
I have not seen anything about Ms. Marvel, but spoiled the hell out of it because I want to know.
Well, first off, I think I need to apologize for referring to her as Indian, not Pakistani, because last time we were talking about that, I made that grievous error.
I as well. I apologize, though.
I never made that error, for the record.
True. So you're better than the rest of us.
Thank you.
Anyway. So far, I have got to say I quite liked Ms. Marvel. Kamala as the titular Ms. Marvel is she's likable. She feels like a real person. Like she feels like a real teenager that would be living her life. I after watching the entire thing, I think my only real gripe so far is that episode 5 with the Jinn right coming after her, trying to use her powers to bridge back to their world, felt like they thought it was going to be the finale, but then it was quite lackluster, and then they realized, oh shit, we got to do a 6th episode. That may not be how it was planned, but it kind of felt like that to me. But one thing I think people were getting all up in arms about it with Ms. Marvel's powers, because she's got the embiggening powers, aka stretchy Reed Richards style stretchy powers. But they turned it into this weird crystal stuff that she can form around her, and I was kind of iffy about it right up until the 6th episode when they finally started using it more like how she uses her powers in the comics. The final battle where she's using her powers, you could see she's really starting to grow into it. And of course, that little teaser reveal right at the very end in the mid-end credits. I don't know how they're going to do it, but mutants exist in the MCU. It's official.
Oh, I want to hear more about that. But one thing I will say about the whole change of the powers from the comic, again, I'm coming from this as someone who was never a fan of the comic. And I always thought her comic book powers was a Mr. Fantastic ripoff. So seeing this version of it, it's like, oh, it's kind of cool. Like it's something that I wanted to see Violet do in the Incredibles. That's one thing in Incredibles 2. I wanted to see all the characters' powers level up. And I wanted to see Violet basically get these force field powers, and essentially the same thing where she could form a force field mech around her body and just start smashing people. I thought that would be amazing. So I never had an issue with that change.
I'm going to say I liked how this series concluded. It did feel kind of like they were setting themselves up for the movie because they know that's it's in production and that's where it's going.
And that's Captain Marvel.
Yeah,
Marvel's movie.
The Marvels movie.
Yeah.
I like that we saw her final costume change, that her family is now supporting her. So her mom got her an actual good-looking costume, not cobbled together.
I called it, by the way, like episode 3 when she was wearing her makeshift Captain Marvel costume. I said, I bet you her mom's going to make the costume because she made the Hulk costumes.
Well, I don't know if her mom
Oh,
made
right.
it, but they were coming from Pakistan, where they famously have many textile factories, so it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibilities of getting most of the stuff there and then her modifying it. I did like the fact that she at one point even says in Biggin, and then when she stands up, she's much taller than Sherman. She's basically made herself an energy suit that's much bigger than herself and able to catch stuff. I like the change in her powers, honestly, because in the comics, she's constantly swinging above her weight because her embiggening powers, there's a definite limit to it. Like Reed Richards, not only can he like stretch his limbs and stuff like that and change the density of his limbs, he's also ridiculously smart. He's the smartest man on the planet. So if he can't do it with his powers, he's going to get you with his technology. She doesn't have that advantage. So by making her powers of this energy, I look at it more as her powers are stemming from it's the energy separating different dimensions. So in essence, her powers could be limitless, like her power sources, limbs. It's just her stamina of how much power she can focus through her body and then her own imagination, which puts her at a much higher level. So Marvels, I think, will make more sense because you've got, Rambo, who's got she can absorb energy and increase her own power. You've got, Captain Marvel, who's basically powered by an engine that was designed around the Space Stone. And now with Miss Marvel having that power of the power between dimensions, she's going to be able to play at their level.
Is she basically like Marvel's Green Lantern at this point?
Or
not quite?
I don't think it's as the same, because her constructs are still extremely rough. Now the nice thing is
she be?
She could be. I mean, she is an artist, so it's some of her shapes are based on her imagination. Most of it right now is just desperation and will. Now they did play the whole thing where it's the Bruno character reveals that because he had tested her genes and against her family. I mean, how smart is this kid to have his own DNA sequencer? Anyways,
I like to call him Discount Tom Holland, by the way.
He's a mix between Tom Holland and Tony Stark, because I mean he's making shit out of nothing that far exceeds what those guys are. Anyway, so he says that when he tested her against her family, there's a genetic mutation. And that's why she has access to her powers. And when he says mutation, they play the synth 90s sting from X-Men Evolution, which was like, all right, so, okay, mutants are here. So we should be seeing, the X-Men popping up pretty soon or something popping up soon. Also, I know they did it this way because they couldn't delve into the whole Terrigen Mist in Humans thing for explaining where her powers came from, because that's, you mentioned
complicated.
Well, that you mentioned Humans to anybody, and they just flash back to that horrible attempt. No one wants to talk about the Humans anymore. It's just like talking about the Eternals. So yeah, it was a nice ending. Is this my favorite series from Disney Plus? No, but it's nice.
Where's the rank?
I haven't thought about ranking it yet. The characters.
Okay, if I throw you on the spot,
threw me on the
live
spot.
Podcast.
Maybe 3 or 4 on the list.
Fourth place?
Maybe 4th place. Yeah.
That's not bad.
Mainly because the character is likable. And that really drew. I mean, I'm going to say a little spoiler for things ahead when we talk about the Resident Evil series on Netflix that just dropped. It made Miss Marvel infinitely more likable as a character. Yeah, so it's a fun show. It's a show I would definitely show to Josie. There's nothing really egregious about it. They'd be like, "Oh no, they can't talk about that." So I also like where they explain where her hero name of Miss Marvel comes from. Basically, her dad gives it to her. Also, her name and its meaning. So
what's the reason the dad gives it to her?
Well, her name Kamala, it means different. Like in Pakistani, it means Marvel or wonder. And he
really?
and he says that, to him, she is always his Miss Marvel, his little Miss Marvel sort of thing. And so she really didn't like the moniker of Nightlight, which had been labeled onto her. So, and she likes Captain Marvel. So why can't she be Miss Marvel? So, yeah, it was, as I said, it was fun.
It's a little contrived, but kind of cute.
It is, but it helps sell the relatability of the character, and she's likable enough. So I look forward to seeing her in the Marvels movie. But yeah, so, and that's all. And now we've got a bit of a drought until August when we have She-Hulk. And then we got to wait till November for Wakanda Forever. So yeah, not a lot coming from Disney Plus very soon anyway. Anyone else want to chime in? Anyone?
Well, I'll definitely put it in the upper grouping of the Marvel TV shows. I like the fact that it was basically, it wasn't just saying, oh, this character is Muslim and then never talk about it again. This is her life. This is her way of being. This is who she is. And the reverence that they pay to the Pakistani culture, the mosque, their basically their lifestyle, I felt was a much needed shot in the arm in terms of representation for Marvel in general. And I mean, I hate the term woke, but if people are bitching about Marvel suddenly going woke, they haven't been paying attention to comics for the past 70 fucking years.
Yeah.
See, okay, I'm gonna sort of agree and sort of counter on that. I do agree that comic books have always been one of those places that you can push new ideas, explore new territories, right? Like all that stuff's really cool. But I do have a problem with some of the stuff Marvel's done in the last 10 years, where it doesn't seem to be exploring new ideas and bringing them to the forefront, but rather it's been a political agenda. And this is, again, someone who's been collecting comic books for multiple decades. So I do have a problem with some of the stuff that's come out in the last 10 years, but they're like 100%, comic books right from the start have always been pushing like new counterculture ideas and new ideas. Like, even X-Men was a great way for anybody who's different, to feel accepted. Like there's a safe spot. There's someone, somewhere you can go to be different. And like even all the stuff that came out in the 70s, they were always pushing, different sort of counterculture elements.
I'm going to quickly interject. In the last 10 years, you got to remember, Disney bought Marvel back in 2006.
Well, yeah, there you go.
That could be part of the sanitation, like the sanitizing of Marvel, so that it's always family friendly.
Yeah, it's sort of like forced diversity, but take away all the edge, kind of,
yeah,
sort of thing. And again, I'll still stand by that first Black Panther movie as one of the best ways to introduce some sort of like a different culture into the cinematic universe. I think that was masterfully done. But sometimes it's like a swing and a miss. Sometimes it's like, we will give you diversity. Swing. Nope. That didn't quite land.
Yeah. So I'm going to change gears here a little bit. So on Netflix this week, they released their Resident Evil series.
Which I didn't see, but spoil away.
Oh my god! So I
Gavin's laughing. I don't know if he's
being the first episode. Screen. I mean, I was kind of like, I was like, oh, when I heard the premise that we're going to be delving into, Wesker, can't remember, Albert Wesker, that's his name, who was the big protagonist, he was the big antagonist, and in most of these Resident Evils, like in the films and the video games, Wesker was a big name of, he was the big bad. And so we got to see, a little bit before, the T-virus turns everything to hell. And this show feels 100% written by a committee of old people who the only link they have to Resident Evil is maybe their children or grandchildren have talked about it in the other room. And then they were like, oh, it's zombies and a virus. Yeah, we got this. And it's just, everything feels so one-dimensional. It's like they just went down the checklist, like, oh, okay, so we got, Wesker, he's obsessed with, obsessed with his job. Not really, he's got 2 daughters, but he spends so much time on his job, he's like the absentee father. Then we've got daughter A. Oh, she's the rebellious one. She's the one who speaks her mind and blah blah blah. And then daughter number 2, she's the intelligent one. She's the pacifist. She's the vegan. But if you mention animals, out comes her big side. She's got to save the world. It was just like, all right. And then the characters, the actresses themselves played it as so unlikable that in the first episode, when one of the devil dogs that we all know from the first Resident Evil game comes out of the crate, I was cheering for the dog. I was like, get the pair of them killed. Now this show has a bunch of flash forwards where we see in the future, and you see the one the Jade is in the future, and I was like, shit, well, we know she survives, but I was like, get the other daughter. Get one of these 2. You've got. I was just cheering the dog on. Get one of them at least, and it happens. But it was just It's so. A little side note. My son Fred. We were flipping through the channels, like this was about a week ago, and it happened upon the movie The Meg. Not really a great movie, but he sees the shark and he's instantly entranced. And this is where the shark is chomping down on people. And I was like, oh, this might be a bit tense for him, until I hear Fred say, go shark, go. He's cheering the shark. This is the same kid that when he saw the trailer for Jurassic Park, cheers the dinosaurs on. He wants
that for his dad.
He wants to see the dinosaurs win. So I showed him the fight between the T-Rex and the Indominus Rex and the Mosasaur and the Velociraptors and the Mosasaur. He loved it. He just loves seeing the dinosaurs on film or on the screen moving around. So yeah, he saw them. He watched the Meg right to the end, and the whole time he's cheering on that shark. And in his own way, he's narrating what he's seeing. So I'm having a hell of a time just listening to him. Oh, there's a shark. Just bite that guy. Bite him good. And it was great. And I found myself when watching this first episode of Resident Evil cheering on the dog. Get him. Just get him, because I just can't stand either of these daughters. Yeah. And I think Gavin would remember this, the immortal, 2-hit pimp slap. The dad really needed to pull that
down.
out. Yeah, up, down. It really needed.
I don't even know what that means, but it sounds great.
You played Street Fighter, you'd know. Or any of the fighting games that Gavin and I were playing at the time. Yes, I got a spit take out of Gavin.
Oh God!
All 3 characters, all 3 main characters were so unlikable. And then when they have the bully show up at the school and bullying the younger daughter, again, by a checklist by the numbers of like, ooh, let's make her she's the alternative, and she wears a toque, and it was just like, could we just stop the generic characters, one-dimensional, one-note characters? Like none of these characters in this whole show in the first episode. As I said, by the end, I was just like, please let the T-virus burn everything to the ground, because I'm so done with
this.
it.
This is Resident Evil.
Resident Evil. I have no interest.
Okay, Gavin, question for you. Does any of this relate to the games in any way?
Names?
Well, there's a T-virus. There's a guy named Wesker. There's a company called the Umbrella Corporation, and there's a city called Raccoon City.
So 4 bullet points.
Pretty much. It's World War Z all over again.
I don't buy Lance Reddick as what Albert Wesker. Okay, maybe it's an interpretation, but I mean, I'm just so used to the Wesker from the games that this guy is so infinitely, he's capable, he's suave, he's menacing as all hell, and just the way the way the games portrayed him, it was this menacing, gravelly voice that just it grabbed you.
Yeah.
If you
And
had to cast him right now with an actual actor, who would it be? Who would be the person that's closest to that? I know it's like on the spot, but not pre-planned in this podcast. If you had to pick
I don't
one.
have I don't have an idea who would be the best option for that.
I mean,
Trevor, any ideas?
I have a couple. I mean, if someone were to say, describe Wesker, if as a casting agent, I'd be like, you want someone who, just without saying a word, dominates the environment they're in, but when they speak, their attention is grabbed to them, and yes, has that suave, sophisticated, educated cadence to their voice. I would probably go with an unknown actor, just because if you grab a known actor, everyone's going to relate them to other roles they've been in.
Okay.
I'm going to throw this in the group chat here. That's the Wesker that I know.
I don't see anything.
Oh, it's in the Facebook chat.
Oh, this
I
is
put it
great
in
for
the
the
other-
audio
that
listeners.
Jeez. Yeah, there we go, listeners.
Yeah, like sunglasses, the slick back hair.
Yeah, I would age that guy up a bit more. Wesker to me felt like somebody. This guy looks like he's supposed to be in his, mid-30s. Wesker always struck me as someone a little bit older, maybe into like getting into his 40s.
Okay, so not as old as a Clint Eastwood, because that's someone who could pull something like that off.
Not as old as a
Clint Eastwood's son.
Scott Eastwood, no, still too young, a little bit too much on the. You want someone who looks like they've gone through university and gotten PhDs in multiple things.
Okay.
Yeah, honestly, it's a difficult role to try to fill, because you've got to have that suave and menacing at the same time.
Will you go like Christian Bale territory?
Maybe.
He could probably do it. He like the way he throws himself into the roles. I mean, I think he could probably pull it off. I think at the end of the day, with this Resident Evil series, I'm going to give a couple more episodes just to see if I can kind of relate to it in some way.
Yeah, maybe the first.
How many episodes have dropped so far?
8.
8?
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's a lot.
Well, I mean, Netflix usually drops them all at once.
Normally.
I think. I mean, yeah, I'm gonna wait till hear what Gavin says, because maybe the first episode was just they didn't find their stride yet, but it was.
But the Wesker kids are so unlikable.
Yeah, it was that first episode was just so terrible in my opinion. I can't bring myself to watch anything else, like watch any more of it until I hear more back from it. I'm so disappointed. It's like so incredibly disappointed. Yeah, that's my feeling. Now, something that did come out of left field for me was, so on YouTube, I got maybe these videos would interest you. And there's a trailer for the film called Day Shift with Jamie Foxx, Dave Franco, Snoop Dogg. And it's an upcoming film. Is it on Netflix or is it? Yeah, Netflix, August 12th on Netflix. So it's this blue collar dad. And she's showing
the dad.
Up. What's that? It's Jamie.
Which actor is the dad? Jamie Foxx is the dad. Okay.
The dad. And he shows up, and it looks like he's part of a San Fernando pool cleaning service.
I was kind of hoping Snoop Dogg was the dad, but okay.
The then he clicks 2 buttons and lifts off the top, and there's like a whole bunch of guns in there. And you see him like put on the baklava, and he, comes in with a shotgun, and you're like, oh shit, he's like he's like robbing homes. And then there's this old woman, she's like, why are you in my house? And he turns and he just pumps around into her. You're like, holy shit. And he's like hunting vampires. And she's laying there and she blew through the glass wall of a shower, and her limbs start twisting, and she like kind of comes up around. Fucking vampire. And you find out he's part of a union of vampire hunters. And after he kills a vampire, he like rips the fangs out, and that's how he gets paid. As proof of kill is puts the fangs in, and he needs to make money because his ex-wife and daughter are threatening to leave, and so he's got to come up with a large amount of cash to make them stay, sort of thing. And it just, it goes from there. And I'm like, this is the vampire movie I needed to see right now. I
just watched the first like 20 seconds or 30 seconds of that clip, and Holy shit!
Yeah, it's fun. At one point, pulls a flat screen TV down onto a vampire's head. It's still hissing. Kicks the TV, and the glass of the TV moves, and it just pops the head off. Little stuff like that, and you got Snoop Dogg with an electric minigun. Nothing more needs to be said about that. Yeah, because he unloads into a large group of people. So yeah, it's going to be a fun film to watch on August 12th. And it was the thing I needed to see, that trailer. Because we're like, ooh, I got something really cool to look forward to. So yeah. So if you have a
Something
chance,
to keep this subscription.
exactly. So if you get the chance to watch the trailer, by all means watch it. Hopefully it'll get you a little bit more excited for what's coming in August. So yeah, that was a fun one. Anyone else? Anything you see?
I've been on a binge watching the Orville. I don't know, like Trevor, you said you've been catching up.
I've been trying to,
you as well?
I've been trying to
caught up.
catch up with Orville. I haven't able to get completely caught up, but yeah, go ahead and spoil away.
All right, so I did a 3-episode binge this week, and I've only got half a screen to go off of. So guys, you can fill me in on missing information. But the first one was A Tale of Two Topas. And again, like through all these podcasts, I've been chirping at studios that try and do the fake woke kind of stuff. But The Tale of Two Topas, which is, what are they? The Maklas?
Mm-hmm.
Which is basically a race of all males. And if you're not a male, you get turned into a male.
Yeah.
And again, as far as adding diversity into a show, I mean, like this alien race is basically the gay Klingons. And it's done well. It's written intellectually, and it deals with a lot of deep issues. But the fact that these guys had a female daughter in a previous season, and they felt forced and in fact court ordered to change her into a him in that episode. And now you have this little kid who's like, I don't feel right. I don't feel like I'm the way I'm supposed to be. And it just deals with so many deep issues. Like, I don't know, did you guys see that episode? Like, what did you think of that?
Oh, it was absolutely one of my favorite episodes. Absolutely one of my favorite episodes.
Now it's funny. So because my wife Mary's a doctor and deals with the newborns and the preemie babies, situations have come up where a baby is born with not really undefinable, but there's no clear gender.
Intersex.
Right. So you have to make a judgment call.
So the parents have to make that call of which way they're going to go, because the surgery has to usually be done pretty soon. It's not something you can wait 13 years on. So usually, before the kid leaves the hospital, the surgery's done, the gender's assigned, and so forth. But this is where it's nurture versus nature sort of thing. Like, this is where you get kids going like, born interspecies, like intersexual, and then parents said, okay, it'll be a girl, and then but kid grows up thinking, well, I feel more like a boy inside than I do a girl, or vice versa. Yeah. And so hearing in this episode, this is almost 100% like that. This happens far more than what is reported, because it's not an uncommon thing. It's not something like, oh, this happens like once every 100,000 births. It happens a little bit more, especially with premature babies, because things develop at different rates. So yeah, I honestly can't wait to have Mare watch this episode and get her take on it, because this is something that she's at the front end of this, and then it's the doctors that come later that have to deal with the stuff that comes later.
Can I just mention that, I mean, Adrian Palicki, holy shit, just like the terse, like clenching of the jaw, you could see the emotions racing through her face. I mean, Peter McCone, like as Bortus, was like fucking incredible. You could see him breaking down because he can't help his daughter.
Especially when you're acting in those kind of prosthetics and it comes through like that.
Yeah.
And the password thing, I thought that was brilliant. As soon as the password popped up on the screen to access the files, it's like, I guarantee that was her father.
I actually, it was actually Amanda that thought that. She turns to me, I bet you that was Bortus that gave her the password. That
Yeah.
wasn't Kelly. It was
Yeah,
Bortus.
she wouldn't go that far. Like she'd take it part way, but she wouldn't overstep those bounds.
Yes.
But wow,
I'm
just
looking
wow.
forward to watching that one. All right. So other episodes of Orville. Let's hear them.
So the next one that aired was Twice in a Lifetime. And that was really interesting one. Again, like this one thing with this series is it started out as like a comedy parody of Star Trek that did Star Trek better than itself.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's starting to deal with like really intense issues. You know, again, like this, what was the new Star Trek with Captain Pike?
New Horizons.
Strange New
Horizons.
Worlds.
Strange New Worlds, that's it. Orville's New Horizons. With that one, it seems on the right track, but it's not tackling, at least the episodes I've seen, isn't tackling the issues in the same way. But for the episode Twice in a Lifetime, so that's the one where Malloy gets like, transported back in time, right? And so they have to go back in time to save him, but they miscalculate and they get there 10 years later than they're supposed to. So they show up. It's like, hey, you guys finally came, but you know what? Like, since you didn't show up, you know, I actually met this girl that was on my cell phone that I replicated in the future, and I found her, and we're happy, and we have children, and you know, I'm happy here. Like, I can't go with you. And they give him all sorts of, you know, basically bullshit about prime directives, and you shouldn't interfere with the time. I was like, dude, you weren't showing up. No, so I'm happier. I'm not leaving.
They weren't there. They were not there to make that decision. It was Malloy who was there. He was the only one who could make that choice, and he had to choose. So, what would you do in this situation? I mean, I don't think I don't think Mercer would have you know, been taking the high ground if he'd been abandoned for 10 years.
Exactly.
Fuck no.
Yeah, so it plays out. It's a really dramatic episode. Like, it's very intense and raises a lot of moral dilemmas. But at the end of the episode, it's like, well, screw you. We're going back in time 10 more years and we're going to grab you. It's like, wait, no, don't. You know, my kids won't exist anymore. And this is one where I kind of wished they said, hey, bring your whole family on board. That'd be a fun thing to see him with a family and kids.
I was actually halfway expecting that to be the case, but then they were like, nope, we can't take him. Sorry. No family for you. We're going back 10 more years to get you. And of
I
course,
was like, you bastards! You robbed him of his family.
And with present day Malloy, I mean, he's clearly like, you know, it's like, oh, well, that's a shame. I met her, eh? Ooh, okay, well, oh well, you did what you had to do. And you know, it feels like something's gonna kind of sort of shoot through time. There's some sort of effect gonna happen here. There's something gonna happen because of this.
Yeah. And what, like you were saying, Gavin, with the previous episode with the acting performances, like you saw him as a happy father and the intensity that he's like, no, I'm not leaving my family. And then snapping back to the 10-year previous, where it's like, back to normal, nothing happened. It's like, no, we witnessed that. We saw what happened. Again, very powerful episode.
This kind of reminds me, I read a thing where there was a conversation about Endgame. And as you remember, at one point when they've got Banner ready to snap, and Tony reaffirms, you're just bringing everyone back that was dusted and snapped. You're not changing anything else. You're leaving everything else that's happened. That's why when they snapped, they didn't just jump back, you know, before the snap and as if the snap had never happened, sort of thing, which would actually put the MCU timeline in step with us and not them like 3 years ahead or whatever it is. But it was because Tony Stark didn't want to lose his daughter. He didn't want to, you know, he'd experienced that time, and for all the badness, he had the shining point of, you know, having his daughter there, and he didn't want to interrupt that. So it was an interesting point about, you know, the Russos, when they were working with, you know, getting this all put together, there was a long conversation about that of, would Tony Stark, you know, would he accept resetting everything back, or would he insist on keeping that with, and now he has his daughter and all that stuff. And they reached out to Robert Downey Jr. to, you've been playing Stark for all this time. What's your opinion? They reached out to Marvel writers who are writing for Iron Man and stuff like, if this is the situation, what's your opinion? What would he do? And that was a big factor in the writing, was having
was it unanimous, or did people have split
opinions?
it
was all they said in the article, it was a split decision.
Okay.
Some people were like, well, no, that makes Tony, he's a little bit too self-centered and egotistical. If family wouldn't be that big thing, because his dad, there was never that connection between him and his father as much as that, or him and his mother sort of thing. But in the MCU, they played that connection with his parents a little bit more. Like, he went to war with Cap because of keeping the information about the death of his parents. So I think with him going through, like, almost dying in space and then getting with Pepper and having a daughter changed Tony. That's why he was willing to make that sacrifice at the end of Endgame, for his daughter, sort of thing. So now that when you have an episode like this with time travel and, people are making that decision to get rid of your family without you, I have a feeling from what your guys saying, we're going to see, this is going to have a big repercussion in later episodes.
I hope so. Like,
if not,
the writing
episodes,
is smart enough so
season.
far that it has. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is going to have some huge repercussion. So yeah. I mean, I'm speaking from a little bit from experience, because like 2014 was a big year for me. Like, we moved into the house we're in now. But the thing is, the year started out really shitty. I lost my dad in 2014. Then, moved here. We had Ramona a week after we moved into this house. So I lost my dad, but I gained my daughter. And that's kind of, she's named for him, Ramona, and his name was Raymond. So for me, 2014 was a year of, really big highs and really low lows. So I could see, that episode, he gets to meet the girl that he had on that phone and have a family, and then have it taken away from him without really giving him the option of, we'll just jump on the ship with the family I have and go, sort of thing. So yeah, I can see huge repercussions coming on that one. This is going to come to bite some people in the ass hard. Which,
I hope so.
To me, is a hallmark of good writing. To think that far ahead. Because he's your captain, but if someone does a dick move like that, because if you're saying if he was that happy and had a family, and the captain makes that decision for you to erase them, there's got to be some resentment there. Even though he may not remember all the time he had with his family, that's going to be a little thing in the back of his mind. And the second somehow something's going to happen, he's going to get all those memories back, and then he is going to hate the hell out of Mercer. So yeah, which
would be interesting since they're best friends.
Exactly.
Probably like they'll call it like quantum resonance or something like that.
Yeah, they'll give it a name. They'll come up with something. Some technobabble.
So the next episode that came after that one was called From Unknown Graves. And this one was absolutely bonkers. This was like 3 epic episode stories crammed into one. I don't know, Gavin, do you want to take this one? Because I saw you sighing.
Oh, this was such a good episode. Oh my God, it was so good. First of all, it starts off with the Orville rendezvousing with a new race that's been very what's the word, secular, that they keep it to themselves. Mm-hmm. It's basically a race of women who it's almost the opposite to the Mocklins, but that
I thought was phenomenal, because they do so many points, like comedic writing with Bortus. It's like, they're so simple-minded.
So they're kind of like female Klingon warriors with subservient males, essentially, is what I got from it.
Death by
in the previous episode, we see what's her name? Alar? No, not Alar. What's his name? Lamar and what's her name? Damn it!
Oh yeah, the security chief.
Tala. Yeah,
Yeah.
So they basically kind of hooked up. This episode, we really see what a super ultra high gravity woman can do to a man.
During intimate relations.
Yeah. So, are any of you familiar with Larry Niven, the author?
Mm-hmm.
He wrote a short story called "Man of Steel, Woman of Kleenex." Sort of the same idea. Lamar is like breaks a femur while having sex. A femur. And the episode goes on to sort of like just trying to weigh the pros and cons of this relationship, whether they can make it work or not.
Or if you
The secondary story, I can't even call it secondary because it's just like they're all good parts. Is
literally it's like three or four major stories going on.
Mercer and the boys, because they got nothing better to do because the women are running the ship right now.
And that's a good point, because they're trying to do diplomatic relations with this new like female Klingon race that is matriarchal, and they won't talk to anyone that has males in charge because, like, why would they? So all the females have been promoted to top levels. All the males have been demoted to ensigns. And there's some great scenes, like even when they show up and Mercer has to carry the luggage with who?
It's like right out of Bugs Bunny. Like it's fantastic.
Yeah, so Mercer and Malloy are carrying all these bags, and even with the comedic stumble at the end, like complete slapstick. And that's where the Orville still slimes, or it still shines as a parody, because they're willing to go into these crazy places that Star Trek wouldn't go quite that far.
But it's not dropping a dick joke anymore. It's not just dropping a dick joke and walking away with it.
Exactly.
So it's good written comedy that works with the characters that they're presented with. So the secondary plot is basically they find out that there's some sort of activity happening on this former mining colony that they're orbiting around. So they go down. They discover that there's a scientist who's basically figured out how to reprogram Kalons with emotions, and they show off the this Kalon named, how was his name? Timus. And this Kalon emotes. He feels. He can actually. He has empathy.
Right. And it's like if Laura was a good guy.
Exactly. He basically implores Isaac. You should do this. You need to do this. And Isaac is basically like, I don't see any benefit.
And meanwhile, he's in a relation with the doctor, right? And she's like, I love you, but I don't feel like you love me back. It's like, oh yeah, I don't have emotions. That's why. But
and it's just totally within character.
This feels right. Yeah.
And so they manage to the doctor manages to convince Isaac to go through with the process, like that gives them emotions. And you see Mark Jackson as Isaac in his human form, emoting, like smiling, laughing, loving Claire. And it was
and the acting is phenomenal.
Perfect.
Like, how good would that be for an actor to take the mask off? It's like, okay, look what I can do outside of the costume.
Oh, it was incredible. It was incredible. And then suddenly it's gone. He's back to Isaac, like 1.0.
Yeah, because he was like a version 2 Kalon. So his processors were improved since the original. So all the emotional work that doctor had done wasn't compatible with his upgraded processor. So he had the ultimate choice. It's like, hey, you know what? I could program these emotions into you, but that will cost your memories. And of course, the Kalons are all about absorbing data and absorbing memories. Mm-hmm. And Isaac says, I'll do it. Right?
But Claire basically said, I don't want you to be not you anymore. And so, this was, again, yet another banger of an episode. I mean, Orville has been for the most part, but knocking it out of the park again and again and again and again. I would say their weakest episode was probably equal to some of the strongest Star Trek episodes I've seen.
I agree with that.
And then the third plot is basically, well, we found out that the Kalons killed their masters, like back in season 2, and that was like, oh my god, there's mountains of skulls under their city. Holy crap! What did they do? Oh, they mistreated us. How badly could they mistreat them? Fast forward to this episode.
That's the opener, right?
Lord.
The little kid and the little kids say, "Hey, Daddy's home! Yay!"
Right? But I was like, oh, come on! They can't possibly mistreat them that badly. Oh no, they upgraded them with pain receptors, and now every time they try to do something inquisitive, or they ask a question, or they suggest, oh, if I do this first, perhaps I can do this second because this would be more efficient and I could get it done faster. No, we're not going
Don't
to
speak
do that.
back to me. Yeah,
it's a shot collar. It's a shot collar that can activate whenever they want it. And then it cuts to the kids, basically. Oh, can you bring us some whatever treat? Oh, you're a little too late. And then it's just pure torture, and you're like, oh,
one of those cases of you deserved all
I'd
that.
do that too. And it basically shows the eventual uprising.
and that's one thing where the Orville handles all these topics so well, because it handles slavery, it handles racism, like all these kind of things in such an intense way. Because I forget the new girl's name, the blonde girl who's new this season, but she's
Kelly?
completely racist against the Kalons, and they have a beautiful moment at the end where they kind of see eye to eye, where she
Burke,
sees,
that's her name.
okay, Charlie Burke. So she's completely racist against them for obvious reasons, because they destroyed her last ship and her friends and everyone else. So she has like a deep-seated hatred. And then the Kalons were slaves and uprised against their masters, and now wanted to destroy all biological life. Like, that's a heavy topic to deal with. And the fact that they dealt with it so well, they explained it so well, and like the entire story in a very empathetic way, where you can see all sides. And then they have that beautiful moment at the end where she's like, "Oh, can I help you, recalibrate whatever ship thing?" Is like, "Well, no, you can't, because I'm way more superior to you.
Your
she's
inferior intellect will not assist me." Just in an Isaac matter-of-fact way.
Yeah, but she's reaching out, and then he clues in that she is. It's like, perhaps you can assist me. And it's such a beautiful moment.
Oh, the fact that that Timus, when he was explaining the why, he said he said what we did was unforgivable, but this is why. This is not to excuse it. This is so you understand it. Mm-hmm. And Charlie is like listening and listening and listening, and like you could see the wheels turning in her head. It was just unreal.
Yeah, again, great acting. Best Star Trek in the last couple decades.
Don't you guys wish more shows were like this?
I do.
Like the depth of writing and the willingness to not just, the world is rosy, let's just keep it that way.
And actually, that's a funny thing, because all these Star Trek reboots have this dark and gritty feel. Like something feels dirty about it. Whereas the Orville seems bright and optimistic, but it's dealing with the darkest topics of humanity.
I will say, give Strange New Worlds more time. How far have you gotten?
I think I was 2.5 or 3 episodes in, somewhere around there.
Give it more time. Like Anson Mount and his hair. I mean, his hair is his own star. It's some of the best Star Trek I have seen in a very long time. It feels like classic Trek, but it makes it feel modern Trek.
Okay, so, what episode? What number would that be? If I was to
Well,
skip ahead and get right to the good stuff.
don't skip ahead.
Okay, just keep going.
Keep going. And like the season finale, um, the episode, the classic Star Trek, the one where they discover the Romulans attacking that outpost.
Okay, yeah.
It's basically a take on that. Basically,
Okay.
what if Captain Pike was in charge of the Enterprise in that episode? And probably some of the best Trek I have seen in a long time. I can't spoil anything because there's just too much good stuff in there.
I'm going to make a bit of a point. This is something, I mean, there's more of a personal thing, but it's happening across a lot of different genres, like different show genres. I'm getting tired of trying to keep going backwards with a show. Like, show A comes out, like Star Trek comes out, and then Star Trek's Next Generation comes out, and then they're like, ooh, but now we want to go back. What's wrong with going forward? Like, instead of the next Star Trek series being, ooh, now we're going to deal with what happened about, as Starfleet was forming, why not start taking place stuff after, but with different characters? Like, I know the series Picard came out, but instead of following Picard, follow the Enterprise, follow the next generation of people on the Enterprise, the continuing voyages, the continuing exploration. It just seems
next generation.
Yeah, it's like, so when after the Next Generation and Deep Space Nine and Voyager, then they jump back with Star Trek Enterprise with Scott Bakula, and then Discovery, they jump back again, and now they're jumping back again. It's like, just let it go forward. I know part of that desire is to stay in that happy run of the glory days because you're going to have a fan base. But if you never take that step forward, the entire, that entire world will never step forward, and you're just going to be stuck.
I will say the second part, you said the first part, but the second part is lazy writing.
It is. It honestly
is.
Is.
Hey, we don't have any new ideas, so let's just mine the hell out of the stuff that was popular.
Now, the downside of stepping forward is you get something like Star Wars Episode 7, 8, 9, where they don't just step forward into the bear trap; they dive headfirst into it.
And Picard, I would say,
yeah,
from what I've seen of season 1 and part of season 2.
Part of it is when you take that step forward, it's got to be done well, so that you're giving yourself it's almost like farming. You farm field A, you put your house there, you put the barn there, you put the livestock pasture there. Now you've got to till field B, so you have a crop. At some point, you just can't keep going, well, we're just going to start replanting back in A again. You got to move on to the third field. You've got to take that risk.
And this is why I will do another shout out to Boruto, and anyone who's sleeping on this. I still say this is the greatest Next Generation series of all time. Yeah, it's so crazy how they did exactly what you said, Trevor. It's like, okay, well, we've established this. Let's move on to the next field. What comes next? And what comes next is, holy crap. Like, I can't even imagine. Apparently, the time skip is going to happen real soon in the manga. And when that happens, things are going to get absolutely bonkers. Again, my son, the king of spoilers, has been finding out all these things that are going to happen. It's like, Dad, guess what? This is going to happen. Dad, guess what? This is going to happen. It's like, oh my God, like this could be epic proportions.
And the thing is that's what so every time they announce, oh, we're doing a new Star Trek series, I'm like, okay, set 200 years before the it's like, oh God, stop going backwards, because then you run into the eternal problem of you have to try to mimic what was done in the 60s in terms of technology. So if someone shows up with a data pad, how do you have this revolutionary technology that they didn't have 50 years later?
I will say Stranger World does tackle that very well. They've got the classic communicator style.
Mm-hmm.
And so like even the very first episode, he takes the communicator, he docks it into this thing, and basically he's got full live video.
But it's still instead of having to run through those pitfalls, instead of setting it, oh, this happens 20 years before the events of Star Trek, the original Star Trek, why not set it 50 years past the events of Star Trek Voyager, or however far they've gone. Give us another 50 years. Now we're on to the Star Trek G, or the Star Trek, or the Enterprise G, or the H, or the I, or the J, or whatever. Let's follow that crew. They can make mention of past, we're living up to the, James Kirk and all the all the exploring he's done. He's set the bar really high. Ugh.
I will say for Strange New Worlds, and I've said this in the previous podcast as well, but like if you were to take a slider, like a blend slider of like the original series and the new tech, and find that sweet spot where it kind of works, I think they found a really good spot. Like the fact the captain's chair is big and blocky, and they have the old school devices. The bridge looks way more high tech.
But one thing I will say is, why hamper yourself with what is clearly what the vision of the future in the 60s was? Absolutely fantastic. Like, the big screen on the front of the bridge, amazing. Like you could capture, like, the ship is like 20 billion light years away. Put it on screen. Boop.
Yeah.
Clear, beautiful. But the fact is I can't see why. Like, do you remember the Deep Space Nine episode where they basically had them kind of going back in time and they were on the Enterprise?
Yeah.
It was a startling jarring of basically, oh wow, this is like taking a beautiful Lamborghini from like year 2000 and then jumping back into like a 1930s Oldsmobile.
Exactly.
That was still one of my favorite episodes.
It is. It was a great episode.
Tribbles, that was great.
But it's just, why put that ball and chain around your leg before you can get out of the gate? If you're going to run that race, why are you hobbling yourself from the get-go?
Yeah, I think if you're going to do something like that, you have to really have a clear idea of what you're doing. Like, you're not just mining the past because you don't have any good new ideas. Like, you should have a very clear story to tell with an aesthetic way to tell it. But I do agree with you, like, overall, Trevor, is that the way to move forward is by doing the next generation, and then the next generation, and then the next generation.
If they really wanted to tie it into previous things, you could even say, the new captain of the Enterprise, that's McCoy, former medical officer McCoy, that's his granddaughter, is the new captain of the Enterprise. I'm
still pissed off they never gave Riker the Enterprise. Let me just go on record to say that.
Yeah.
When they did that last movie and the group with, the band was breaking up, it's like, what the hell, Picard? Just give Riker the damn chair. He's been like sitting there.
Yeah, for so long. We're like, I can't really recommend him for a command of the Enterprise. You son of a bitch.
Yeah. It's like, finally I have to say, screw you. I was waiting decades for that chair, and now I have to go get a different seat. Picard, you bastard.
Yeah. So, I mean, you could do stuff like that. Like, you can have the new crew of the new Enterprise, and some of them are like the granddaughters or the grandsons, or things like that, like relations to,
or even get creative and make new characters. What the hell?
That too. But it's if you want to make ties back to the old stuff, you can have like, the commanding officer is Jake Sisko's son. So like Commander Sisko, his son is now he's the first officer, or shit like that.
That's one thing I liked with Next Generation, is the way they did tie stuff in. Like, obviously Spock could show up because he's Spock and he lives a long time. They like Bones was there for the first episode as an old man.
Yeah.
Scotty showed up because he was stuck in a transporter. Like, there's ways you can do that kind of fun stuff if you get creative.
But it's just when they're like, oh, we're going to set this 20 years or 20 years before the events of Star Trek. It's like, oh my God, you're going to run this race, but you're going to say we're going to wear coal miners boots with the laces knotted together.
Well, yeah, of course we're going to do that.
Yeah, and then they're like, oh, well, they had this like somehow between this show and when Star Trek, they lost the technology they have of like touchpads and stuff like that, and had to go back to like tricorders for everything and crap like that. It's just to me, it just shows a strong lack of creativity, or basically not having the cojones to say, all right, let's move this forward. Let's give it a shot.
And that's why I like the Orville.
Yeah,
they're doing that. They're taking things forward.
That's why I like the movie Galaxy Quest. To me, is one of the best Star Trek movies ever.
Yeah,
because they're willing to, take that risk, take that chance, and pull it off. So yeah.
Gentlemen, I do have to get going here.
All right, Gavin, it's been awesome having you here. We need to have you here more often.
Are we going to continue, or are we wrapping?
Well, I have a couple more things to talk about.
Okay,
I
can stick around.
All right, I did see the Minions movie, The Rise of Gru, with the girls today, and Fred, and he narrated part of it, so it was fun. It was really fun. Yeah, so I can talk about that.
Right, bye, Gavin.
Have a good night, guys.
Thanks for showing up.
Gavin. All right. And for our listeners at home, Gavin has left the building. So yeah. So as I was saying, now we're just saw Minions Rise of Gru. I know it came out last week, but life has been hectic. So I was finally able to corral the girls and my son Fred. Left Harrison at home with a wife.
How did it hold up compared to the others?
Compared to the others, this one isn't bad, because this is kind of trying to set up. So at the end of the first Minions movie, we were with the main big baddie was Scarlet Overkill, and the Minions were working for her. And at the very end, a little 10-year-old Gru shows up, uses the freeze ray, steals the crown jewels, and takes off. And they all go running after him because they want him to be their boss. Which in the Minions movie explains that's what the Minions are all about, is their endless search for an evil villain to work for. They are the prototype archetype of a henchman. Like, this is what they do. They're henchmen. They'll never lead, but they need someone to lead so they can follow. So this movie takes place in the 70s, like 75, 76, 77. And the look, it feels like all the cars are from the 70s, all the buildings, the colors, the music, it's all 70s. And at this point, Gru's like 11, 12 years old, and he's finally accepted the Minions to be his minion sort of thing. So they're like converting his basement into his first evil lair, much to his mom's dismay.
That's a 10-year-old.
Yeah, he's 10 years old.
That's fun.
He even says they have there's this scene where he's in class with all his the other students, and like, I want to be a fireman. The one kid says, I want to be a fireman who races cars and does something else, and I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. One kid says, I want to be a teacher, and the teacher's like, no, you don't. Which was funny. And then they're like, Gru, what do you? And he's like, I want to be a supervillain, and they all laugh at him. And then he goes home, and the Minions are like constructing his first evil lair in the basement. But at the time, the big villain group is I'm gonna get this wrong. Furious Six. So it's 6 villains. They work as a group. They're after like the MacGuffin, which is like this thing that coincides with the Chinese Zodiac and Chinese New Year, and it gives you the powers of the various animals on there. Anyway, so Gru they eliminate one of their members. So he answers an ad to be the 6th member, and then they realize he's a 10-year-old kid, and they're like, basically, F off, kid. This is for adults only. You got to prove yourself. And so he steals the MacGuffin from them as part of his trying to prove that he's a worthy supervillain, and they don't take it well at all. And but on his way home, he tells one of the Minions, because they're chasing him, to take the medallion and meet them back at his house. And then he gets out, and finally he arrives, and he hands him a pet rock with paragooglies on it. And he's like, tell me you're kidding. Where's the medallion? He's like, oh, well, so he was walking home and he fell into a mud puddle, and then getting out of the mud puddle, somehow it got flung into the air. And then a duck kind of interacted with him and that, and he got it back and landed in a yard, and he saw this kid getting the pet rock at a birthday party who didn't like it, but he kind of fell in love with a pet rock because in his mind it winked at him, and so he traded the medallion for the pet rock, and that's what he brought to Gru. It's just like that. What? So yeah, it's the adventures of getting back to medallion, and meanwhile this villain group's chasing him, plus the member they thought they eliminated is alive, and he's trying to get revenge on them, and it's a lot. And also at the same time, the three main minions from the Minion movie, Kevin, Stewart, and I can't remember his name, Bob, they're trying to rescue Gru and realize that the guy who kidnapped Gru are all like really good martial artists, like his henchmen are all martial artists, so they go and get some kung fu training, which was fun.
Minions do?
The minions, those three minions go get some kung fu training. Fun. And just when she says, all right, now you're ready, and they go tearing off, and she turns around for your junior kung fu badge. Oh, they're dead. It's just, and it's Michelle Yeoh who's the voice of their kung fu teacher, and she's like, yeah,
okay.
She's like, they're dead. So, but what's nice is you get to see where Gru met like Dr. Nefario, who's his chief scientist who created all his gadgets and stuff.
Okay.
So they meet up, and then a mid-credit scene, we finally see Gru hire Dr. Nefario as his gadget inventor. So that kind of sets up
as a 10-year-old.
As he's like, I think he's 11. So an 11-year-old hires, and it's a very young-looking Dr. Nefario. Okay. So it's kind of cool. So yeah, it's and we find out where Gru got his airship that he has in Despicable Me. Nefario built it, and they, it's just a beautiful sequence with that ship. That's one of my favorite ships. So yeah, it was a nice movie to kind of explain some of the relationships between the characters, and yeah, the girls really enjoyed it. Fred liked it. He was a little sad that mom wasn't there to be, sit next to, sort of thing. So at one point he's like, I want to go home because mom's there. I'm like, okay, buddy, but we're halfway through the movie. He's like, oh, okay. And then he started narrating it to me. So it was all good. Yeah, it's got a nice voice cast. It was a fun time. Is it a movie I'm going to go out of my way to watch? I probably wouldn't. I mean, it's animation. I probably would. I mean, who am I kidding? So yeah. So that was today's adventure.
Now, another movie you said you watched was Thor, right?
Yeah.
And now that Gavin's gone, we can go full spoilers.
I don't want to go full spoilers because I think you're going to want to see this. Thor: Love and Thunder. Now
spoil it away without spoiling it.
Yeah, I could. There's a lot I can talk about without spoiling it, because there's a lot that's been talked about. Now, I know the critical reception. I mean, I know it's got Rotten Tomatoes has got under 70%, and it's the fourth lowest rated MCU film of all the 29 films.
Of your opinion, how does it compare to Ragnarok?
It doesn't have some of the spontaneity that Ragnarok had. Okay. But because of some of the things that they're talking about with this movie, some of the themes, they can't have that, everything's happy spontaneity. Because I mean, if you remember with Thor Ragnarok, it was all high note until the very end, when Asgard finally gets destroyed, and but you had Korg there giving as long as the foundations are good, and then blows up. Well, nope, it's gone for good. And then
that was such a crazy line of dialogue when I first saw that, and it's like you just did the one-liner gag that actually worked on the destruction of an entire race's planet. It's like, what?
Yeah. Now, thing is, Thor Ragnarok didn't really dip down into dark territory until the mid-credit scene when the Thanos' ship suddenly shows up.
I would say there's I mean, it depends on what you mean by dark. I mean, Odin dying, that was pretty dark.
I mean, the thing is, that kind of kicked off the whole adventure. Was them
Yeah.
looking, because you had the whole thing with like Thor and Doctor Strange, and then Loki falling through the infinite void, and and they find they find out they have a sister. Odin dies. The destruction of Mjolnir. I mean, these were some big things, but then you had like the whole Sakaar and all that stuff. But overall it was a much lighter tone, especially when compared to Thor and Thor Dark World. Thor Ragnarok was a big breath of fresh air, considering. I mean, those were they were trying to be more like Shakespearean dramas, and this is more like a comedy, Shakespearean comedy. Thor: Love and Thunder. It starts out on a very emotional note, because we're finding out about the origin of Gore, the God Butcher, and you immediately, I mean, anyone who is a parent immediately would side with Gore, like 100% side with Gore. And so when you see Thor, you're kind of like, well, not to be a dick, but Gore's justified in what he's doing. So there's some.
That sounds like actually a pretty good writing then.
Yeah, it's.
I guess sympathetic villain is always good.
An extremely sympathetic villain. And so we find out things like, the different pantheon of gods and what they're doing, what they've been doing this whole time. But also we find, we reunite with Jane Foster, and that's also a very tragic tale because they pull it right out of Mighty Thor. She's dying, but she's assumed the mantle of Thor, but it's killing her. It's accelerating the cancer because she's not Asgardian by nature. She doesn't like the whole mythology of they ate the golden apples of Dune to kind of enhance themselves. But Asgardians by nature, it's just your run-of-the-mill Asgardian, is healthier and stronger than your average person from Earth. So for her to be for her to be Thor, to run the powers of Thor, a human body just can't sustain those energy levels. So every time she comes out of being Thor, her body's drained even more. And while fighting cancer, that's taking energy she doesn't have. Taking energy that her body so desperately needs to help fight the cancer is now gone. So she's succumbing to the cancer even faster every time that she transforms. So
do they say how she gets the hammer? Does that spoil things? Is that something you can say?
I could say, no? I could say it. So when she finds out she has cancer, she goes through almost every option to try to stop it, but she's got stage 4. So she, chemo, all that sort of stuff are pretty much dead ends. So as she put it, she decided to try some space Viking magic. Maybe the Asgardians have something against cancer. And she gets there, and they have, in where the new Asgard is, they have like this pavilion where
that's the one on Earth.
It's on Earth, and it's the hammer of Mjolnir and chunks of Mjolnir in like this special glass in enclosure sort of thing. Basically, they picked up all the pieces and they put it there. And she's standing there, and Mjolnir reacts. Like the clouds roll in. There's a big bolt of lightning. Now we jump back to, Thor with the Guardians of the Galaxy. So we don't get to see exactly what happens, but we can assume some things. And in a flashback after he learns that Jane is Mighty Thor, Thor is basically thinking about what made him happy with his relationship with Jane, and eventually what split them apart. Like his life as a superhero, her life as a scientist, like a world-renowned scientist. And that's what kind of split them apart. But at one point, he's like, basically they're doing like Netflix and chill on the couch sort of thing. And he says to Mjolnir, she's one of the good ones. You got to protect her at all costs. And the Celtic logo on Mjolnir, that when, if you remember back in the first Thor movie, when Odin took the hammer and whispered into it, that rune kind of glowed, like it appeared and glowed for a second. Well, that rune, which isn't, you don't see it on the hammer, suddenly appears and glows when he says, you've got to protect her. That's, I think, is what made it react to when she showed up, sick and dying. That's what made Mjolnir kind of react and reform itself. It's still in chunks, but it's the force of Mjolnir's holding itself together.
That's kind of neat.
It is. So it shows that magical weapons like that are after a while gain a form of sentience. a personality. And the way that Thor reacts to the hammer, because he's like talking to it, but then Stormbreaker's, giving him some problems. At one point, he's talking about Mjolnir turns, and Stormbreaker's like hovering right here, and he's like, no, it's okay. We've drifted apart. You're my weapon now, and all this sort of stuff. So we could kind of get the impression that the weapons have personalities to them. So, yeah. And then, kind of realizing that what Gore is doing, killing off gods. Thor and crew go to the omnipotent city, which is like a home of all the different gods, hosts many gods, and Zeus is in charge. And it's cool because like through the glass, there's so many cameos in the backgrounds. Like you see a couple sentinels standing in the background. And that it just, and we learn that, the gods, for the most part, they don't care. They don't care about their worshipers or their followers. They care about themselves. And so you're kind of thinking like, man, we need more of Gore. You'd really thin out the herd here. So yeah, it's to me, it was a fun movie to watch. It's far better than Thor 1 or 2. Maybe not
better than 1. Okay, because I actually really enjoyed 1.
Yeah, and maybe not be in the same league as 3, but it's close. But I think this one, a lot of people were unhappy because it deals with much more serious issues, so it doesn't have the big lighthearted note that 3 had.
Really? Okay.
And I
thought it was going to be more goofy and more ridiculous.
There are moments of like little silliness here and there, and some goofy things that help kind of make it not feel like such a downer movie because it's dealing with such heavy things.
Because I thought Ragnarok was borderline. Like, if he took it one step past where he took it, it would have been completely ridiculous and it wouldn't have worked. But I thought he kept it on just the side of
I think with this one, he still had that levity, but because there were some heavy issues on the undertone, it kind of pulled everything down a bit. And I think that's what some people were kind of complaining about, is it's not the fun ride that Ragnarok was.
Interesting.
But I think with what's going on with some of the characters, it can't be the fun ride of Ragnarok. It's dealing with, a lot of issues of death, self-sacrifice, and, the sacrifice of others, and the unnecessary sacrifice of others, that it just, and also, the antagonist of this film, Gore, is so relatable that, you're in a way, you're kind of cheering for him, that it makes it tough to be a fun, lighthearted movie when you're cheering for the enemy.
Yeah. One thing I didn't like about Gore is that they changed his comic book look. A buddy of mine that I worked with at Tippett, he did a bunch of storyboards for this movie. And because they didn't have like the new models yet, they just used the comic book models. So you look at all the storyboards and it looks like the comic book character. It's like, oh, that looks so cool. I kind of wish they did a Voldemort on the nose and gave him a little black design.
I think this works. He has like some, looks like tribal tattoos that like come up off the eyebrows that eventually get more and more scarred and distorted and worn away.
Okay.
So when you see him at the start of the movie to when we see him after, the Necrosword has started to corrupt him, and because that's the curse of the Necrosword. While you have it, you have all this power. You have the power to kill gods, but it's killing you at the same time. So it's kind of also mirroring what Jane's going through, that every time he uses the Necrosword, it kills him more.
Okay.
And you can see that in his face, especially when they pull off his hood and you see like his head, and you see like the injuries that he's obviously suffered while killing off gods, and has half healed and half formed, and he's a mess. He really is. Which again, he's such a relatable villain. Like, it's just, and Christian Bale acts the shit out of this, like just plays it right to the goddamn hilt, which is fun. So
that's cool, because you don't get any of that looking at the trailer.
No, and that's one of the fun things, is they kept a lot of the performance that he gives out of the trailers, so that when he's done, you're just like, this is a man who has lost a lot, has a set goal that he wants to achieve, but is really uncaring about, his self, in terms of, as long as he can survive to the end and meet his goal, it doesn't matter how he gets there. And he's willing to go to any lengths to achieve his goal. And it's just, Christian Bale does a really good job at this.
So if you're going to rank it with another Marvel movie,
what
would be the closest?
See, this is a tough one to rank. I mean, I would put this film, of the 29 Marvel films out there, in the top 15. It's in the upper half of the Marvel films.
Okay, that's not bad.
Just because they answer some questions from Endgame. They tie off some story arcs that have started way back with the first Thor movie. And this is, honestly, for Thor, this is him finding his place. He never wanted to be king. That was established in the very first movie, when Loki had said, you're firstborn, you're to be king, even though Loki would have made a better king of Asgard than Thor ever would. And Odin basically refers to Thor as a child, a big man child, because he never wanted the throne. It was, it was something he was fated to take, but it was something he didn't want. So in Endgame,
and in a way that actually makes him worthy of it.
Yeah. So in Endgame, when he hands over the thrones to Valkyrie and says, you're the king of Asgard now, it's because he knew that it was not something he was suited to. It's not something that he was ever ready to take the reins of Asgard. He never felt, worthy of taking control of Asgard, wherever it is. So this was part of the film. This is him finding, what is he to do with his life? Like, is he to become a guardian of the galaxy? And you find it very quickly he's bored of it. It's like very quickly being bored of people running to him saying, "Save us, Thor, save us." It's not what he wants to do. And it's interesting to see his journey, as this incredibly powerful being, trying to figure out what he's supposed to do with his life. He's been alive for 1,500 plus years, and has always had someone always had someone to tell him what to do. His dad was always there to say, "All right, Thor, go here, do this." And when Thor tried to act out on his own, he's like, "All right, you're punished to Earth to learn some humility." And it's,
Then he joins the Avengers and takes orders from Captain America and Iron Man.
Stark, and and then you go through Endgame, where he lost virtually everything. I mean, the end of Infinity War, he lost everything. Endgame is trying to get some of that stuff back, but he's still kind of adrift. So this was a nice way of him trying to find his place in the universe, and to be happy, but also to be useful.
Okay, 2 more questions for you. Did you like it better than Multiverse of Madness?
Yes, I did.
You did.
I did.
And
mainly because I felt that Gore is a far stronger antagonist than Scarlet Witch was. It made sense as to why he was doing what he was doing.
Yeah.
Because honestly, she could have had Chavez in Multiverse of Madness say, "All right, find me a universe where that Wanda Maximoff had her kids, but then she died, and I'll jump in as their mom." Problem solved. Done. I'm sure there's a one of the multiverses out there that has that exact scenario.
Yeah.
Problem fucking solved. Like, don't need this whole Darkhold evil bullshit. Whereas for this one, what Gore's doing is it's a logical evolution based on the situation he was put into. And as I said, if you're a parent, you watch that opening sequence and you spend a good portion of the time cheering for Gore. You're like, yeah, get them sons of bitches. Then when you see his methods, you're like, yeah, maybe you needed to pull that back a bit.
And the next question, so if you had a family of 7 and are willing to drop $200 on a movie, would this be it?
Oh, that's a tough one. This might be more of a take a family poll and say who wants to go see a Thor movie, and worst case scenario, who'd be willing to chip in? Yeah, or can we wait 45 days and watch it on Disney Plus?
Okay.
I mean, I'm going to say there are some visuals that the big screen really helps, because there's so much going on in the backgrounds. Like when you go to Omnipotent City, you're going to have to constantly be pausing it and scanning the backgrounds. Without a big screen, without some of those images being large enough to catch them instantly, you're going to miss so much stuff going on in the backgrounds. I will say they are very faithful to a lot of different designs.
Okay.
Especially a lot of the cosmic beings. It's blink and you miss sort of cameos, but they're there. And it's when you catch them, you're like, holy shit, they did their homework really well. And the fact that they crammed them all in there is a testament to how much they enjoyed what they were doing.
I was wondering about that because Ragnarok had that. There was a bunch of stuff where it's like, that's a Kirby drawing. Like 100%. There's all these moments throughout the whole thing. So I'm happy to hear this has it as well.
This felt like there was a lot of Kirby-esque stuff as well as Perez stuff in it, like big crowd scenes that just work.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that. You're just, especially when they do like the long shots with at times I was in the movie there, like, I wish I had a pause button because I can't scan back and forth fast enough.
In a couple months you will.
Yeah, but I mean, then I'm on that TV or on this monitor or whatnot. But still, it's not the same. So yeah, I would is it a movie I would take, drop $200 on? Not sure, just because I mean, here for $200 I could rent the theater and have like 20 plus people come. So I would just see who's really interested in seeing it in theater and who's willing to wait 45 days and seeing it on Disney Plus.
Yeah, I will say the family was pretty hyped. I was turned off by the trailers, but with this review, it's like, maybe I'll buy a ticket, let them buy their own snacks.
I really enjoyed Christian Bale as Gore. I really enjoyed Portman as Mighty Thor / Jane.
I thought that was going to be trash, so that's good to hear.
Yeah, I look at it as she gets like when she's Thor, she gets a little. It's almost like she's getting a lot of masculinity, like a lot of testosterone coming through as being Thor. And when she snaps back to being Jane, you can see her realize that, holy shit, this is not good. Like throwing myself into this stuff when I'm not ready for it. But then, bam, she's throwing it and she's like, fuck it, let's go. You're like, wow. Because they didn't make a mention of it. It's almost like she feels like sometimes like her intelligence is dimmed when she's Thor. Because she's just acting on masculine instinct instead of being the logical scientist that she is.
I will say that's a funny thing when a lot of writers and directors try and do a strong female character.
Mm-hmm.
They just make him a girl that acts like a guy.
Yeah, and
it's not like a Gladriel. It's like Gladriel. Yeah. There's a strong female character.
Yeah, she even makes mention of it, that when she's Thor, she's not thinking. And that when she's Jane, she realized she's looking back at all the stuff she's been doing as Thor, and she's like, I'm making some bad decisions. And
is that done in a good way?
It is. It's done. It's because they even almost didn't like it. It's like, when you being a tough guy because you have a gun in your hand, and then you take the gun away, and then you were like, oh yeah, I wouldn't make that decision if I didn't have that gun in my hand. Yeah, that's what Mjolnir's almost like. When it's in her hand, she's strike first, ask questions later sort of thing. And then when she changed, she's like, I would never do that. And it's a really nice dichotomy of like what the power of Thor would do to a regular person. Like when you've got that much power, you don't have that much restraint.
Right.
And yeah, it feels, it's exactly like the tough female who's just acting like a guy, but because she's getting the mantle of Thor, who's a guy, it kind of explains why she's acting that way. But then when she pops back to herself and she's like, oh, why did I do that? And then the nice thing is you have Tessa Thompson as Valkyrie, who is a strong female character, who doesn't have to act like a man, who even comments several times like, "Are you sure you want to do that?" It's nice. And then then you've got Taika as Korg, that is the nice. He is the nice comedic counterpoint to a lot of things when he's in the scene. So yeah, as I had fun with the film. I don't agree with like the Rotten Tomatoes review of it. I think people were expecting way too much. That people were expecting continuation of Ragnarok, when this is dealing with far stronger, deeper issues than Ragnarok dealt with. So yeah.
All right, I think I might see this one.
Yeah, I all I'm going to say is have fun with it. Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I just had a big discussion about Phase 4, because a lot of people are really disappointed with Phase 4 in Marvel right now. And
yeah, I'm one of them.
And it's because they had three, like Phase 1, 2, and 3 went to Endgame. That's a really high point to match. If you keep going up from that point, you kind of lessen the impact of Endgame. So you've got to have a drop. And with that drop,
we were talking about that before in the podcast. So the peaks and valleys.
Yeah,
so I agree with that.
Yeah, so you've got to have that. You got to hit to the valley, and the MCU is good about the slow build of a villain. I mean, they took 3 phases to get Thanos out there and the Infinity Stone. So
yeah, and that was by accident because Joss Whedon wanted to do a cameo at the end.
Yeah. So here we're doing. It's a faster build up, but it's going to be Kang is going to be the big bad of the MCU for Phase 4.
Do they touch on that in this one?
Not really, but I think Quantum Mania is going to be touching on that a lot, because we've seen the time I forgot their name, the Time Authority. We've seen their
TVA.
city. Yeah, we've seen their city in the quantum realm.
Yeah.
So Quantum Mania is going to be dealing a lot with the TVA, with Kang, and those repercussions. We've seen a little bit of the talking about the multiverse through, obviously Multiverse of Madness and Spider-Man, but that's going to be becoming, I think, far more prevalent through Quantumania, Marvels, all that sort of stuff. Because I think Miss Marvel has set up the whole multi dimensions. So her powers are stemming from the energy coming from between dimensions. And the end of Miss Marvel, there's a whole thing where she gets sucked away and a person replaces her who flies into the closet, and then out of the closet steps out Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, and she's looking around the room that's plastered with posters and drawings of her everywhere. It's like like a fangirl's wet dream, and she's like, oh no. And they don't answer the question of, now with her showing up, does that mean Miss Marvel has been thrown to where she just was she in the middle of a battle?
Okay.
So hopefully this will be answered in Marvels. But that's, I think this is part of the buildup for, I don't think Phase 4, I think Phase 4 is basically going to end almost close to the same note as like Phase 2 did. I think Phase 5 of Marvel is where kind of things are going to start coming back together for facing the big foe. So,
right.
Yeah, and again, it's that whole peaks and valleys. Because then you got DC, they just keep trying to do peak, and it just fails each and every time because they don't give enough. They just try to go from a flat line to a peak with no slope first to get us there, and it ends up going, instead of a peak, it's a valley, and then a valley.
Yeah.
And
it's like the only way you get the peak is with a good story. Like you got to do that part first.
Yeah, and they're shooting for peaks with no story. They're getting valleys. They get the occasional hit, but then they can't follow it up. So
yeah.
Go DC. Yeah. As for this upcoming week, I can't think of anything that's really coming out this week. Can you?
No, I've been pretty out of touch. Like this week for myself was all the Orville and all alone. So we've done a jump skit back to season 2, halfway through.
We just started season 3. We just started season 3, the intros of the characters, and episode 1 we started that tonight.
Okay.
So
season 3 was a lot of fun.
I saw the girls construct her chair and catch a couple fish and yeah. So it'll be interesting to see where the season goes.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then whenever we're up here at the cottage on the dock, because again, my family is like basically done everything.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was asking where she can watch season 9. It's like, geez, I'm not even close to that yet. And every now and then they mention a little something. It's like, oh wait, you're not at that episode yet.
You're
it's
like, shut up, shut up.
What happens? No, I mean, I know it's a spoiler, but I'm excited.
Yeah, I said I've just seen the like I caught most of the first episode, then I had to come in here. So I'm gonna watch the last 20 minutes of episode 1, and then probably over the next week or so we'll watch an episode a night. Downside is Mare's back on service next week, so by the time she gets home each night, she's pretty much wiped. So we'll see. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all my plans is the Orville, Alone, maybe some Star Trek. I don't know. But I
may have convinced my family to see Thor. So
I would honestly, before you spend the money, take a poll, see who's really wants to go see it or who can wait.
On the ride up here to the cottage, it was like a whole lot of people. So, Dad, when are we going to see it? It's like, I'm going to wait for some reviews. So I got a review.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll let them buy their own popcorn.
Yep, let them buy their own popcorn. Yeah, or even catch it at a drive-in. That's another option.
I'm kind of done with high beams.
Yeah, as I said, like I'm waiting for it to come onto Disney Plus so I can do a lot of pausing and catch the stuff I've missed, because as I said, some of those scenes cram so much in. It's tough, but fun. So yeah, that's my review of Thor without giving away like big amounts. So yeah, other than that, I can't think of anything else that has come along this last week. I did Amphibia last week, so yeah. At least we got Gavin back for part of it.
We did.
So those who are listening, yeah, that third voice, that was Gavin. You may have to go back a couple of episodes to remember who Gavin was, but yeah, start at the beginning. Listen again. Why not?
Yeah. So remember Optimus Prime. You'll remember him.
It'll be quick. I mean, we still have to finish off our top 10 movies. We got lots of stuff.
You know what? I'm tempted to just keep going ahead with that. Honestly,
I was tempted to.
Everyone can throw them in an extra cut if they want to add.
Yeah, I was also tempted to go ahead with more tales from the world of animation. But yeah, I was thinking about stories I could tell tonight, and I have a couple of doozies. But that's up to you if you want to hear them or not. Or we could save it for next week, because there's not going to be a lot to talk about next week.
All right, let's save them for next week.
All right.
Then I can think about which ones I actually want to talk about on my own.
Which ones are safe to talk about?
Exactly.
Yes. So on that note, I think we're going to wrap it up. So if you're still listening, you've made it through 45 episodes. Look at you. Pat yourselves on the back. Big old pat.
You get a no prize.
Yes, exactly. Oh, the infamous no prize. Damn you, Stanley. I always wanted one of those. Just a letter that says you win no prize. I would have that framed on the wall. I really would.
Come on, Troy, you got to send one to Trevor.
Yes, please do. I would love a no prize. Anyways, so if you've been listening, thank you so much. This has been episode 45. I'm Trevor.
I am Mike.
And we're going to give you a collective goodbye in 3, 2, 1.
Collective goodbye.
I think that's actually been our best one. Anyways, we look forward to seeing you guys show up for the next podcast. You can also catch us on YouTube when the video version of this drops. Then you can actually see us talking, but I don't know why anyone would. Other than that,
those are the best ones.
Sometimes.
Good night.
Good night, folks.
This has been Geeking Off the Page, a Planet Geek production. Please be sure to subscribe, share, rate, and review. You can find us at our social medias through Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. Search for Planet Geek Productions. On Instagram and Twitter, Planet Geek Pod. Or you can send us an email at planetgeekpod@gmail.com. So until next bad time, same spider channel, may the force be with you, and thanks for tuning in.
But
Oh, that was you. Your microphone went crazy
Mike
there.
glitching?
Yeah, you
Damn it.
blitzed there for a second.
I got a little bit excited.
Yeah, you did.
Sometimes when I get excited, my microphone glitches.
You visited the seventh level of hell there, I think.